We've been talking about depression in general, but let's get a little more specific. What about depression in children, teens, and the elderly? Now, I know the first thing most people are going to say is children? Depressed? What do they have to be depressed for? They have no problems, they have no stressors, they have no worries, they have nothing going on in their lives. Their parents do everything for them. Sure, that is not the case. And today you guys are going to learn that children go through so much that yes, not only can they develop depression, but other mental health disorders as well. So what do children have to worry about? There's loads of things, like bullying at school, teachers picking on them, not being able to make friends, being excluded because they're different. Children also face racism, and they're also picked on depending on their size. They're also body shamed or fat shamed. What about parents arguing, yelling, physically fighting, divorce? Now, it's also very difficult for children at a young age to constantly be moving homes. So not having a stable home environment is one of them. Then, of course, there's so much pressure on children to do well at school. You have to do well. You have to come top of your class. You have to get the best grades ever. So if they're falling back on that, or they're a slow learner, or they just haven't reached their peak as yet. And let's not forget all the abuse that children face, especially sexual abuse that starts in their very early years of their lives. Both male and female. Abuse is not just for women only or females only. Abuse can go both ways. And children face this so often. But you know what? A lot of times they don't speak up or they don't say anything because they're either not believed or they're blamed for it, or because they're constantly threatened, if you tell I will do this to you, if you tell I will do that to you. So you may not know. And of course, if your child is experiencing any of these things and you have not created that safe space for them to come and talk to you, then what do you think you're going to know? Nothing. Then of course, there are children who are neglected when they're young. What do I mean by that? Yes, both parents are working, they're trying hard to provide for their family, they may have to work multiple jobs, or they're working long hours, or depending on their shift, so the kids are left either by themselves or to grow up with extended family, or with a nanny or a caregiver, and they don't have that time and affection from their parents. Or some parents have substance use problems, or they're drug users, and they leave their kids abandoned all the time. So neglect is also one of those things that children can face that can help lead to depression. So how do we identify that this child is going through depression? Because they may not have the knowledge to come and say, Mom, Dad, I'm going through depression. But there are certain things that are going on with them that you will be able to pick up on. For example, you'll notice they're sad most of the time, or they just look pulled down, or their demeanor is just hunched over, they're sluggish, they're slow, they're not as happy and bouncy as they might usually be. They may not be playing as much as they used to play, even games that they thoroughly enjoyed. They may not have any interest in watching the cartoons that they liked or listening to the music that they like. Children often dance. You may be playing music and this child will have no reaction to that. They won't even bop their head. They will do nothing. They can also have changes in their sleeping and eating pattern, where, like we mentioned, they can either oversleep or start to have trouble sleeping, or they may overeat or not want to eat at all. Then, of course, there is that factor of being energyless and they're so tired. And as a parent, you're like, but what does my child do to make him or her so tired all the time, right? And it's just that the depression causes you to feel that way. And oftentimes we tend to say, oh, you're lazy, you don't like to do anything, you're not getting up and helping, you're not doing anything. And it's like, but you're not realizing that there's this whole host of other symptoms that's happening at the same time. That it's not that your child doesn't want to, the child just cannot. Then a big one, there comes a lapse in their grades, because they're not able to concentrate, they're not able to focus, they seem to be zoning out, they can't even pay attention to a movie. And of course, when this happens, we're only focusing on the child's grades. We're not focusing on what is going on. And I know children are going to love this one. The first thing parents run to is, oh, you're on your device all the time. Let's start blaming devices. They're always on their phone, they're always on their tablet, they're always on their laptop or something, or they're always playing some game or doing something, and that's why you can't concentrate and focus. No. When a child has depression, you will notice that they may not even be on their phone as much or on their tablet doodling, or they may not even go on the computer to play games the way they used to before. Now, of course, when parents see that, parents are going to be so happy. Oh, they're not spending so much time on the device. But that can be an indicator of your child losing interest, which is one of the signs and symptoms of depression. Even children may have thoughts of worthlessness and hopelessness. And a lot of times, if there is a dysfunctional family or an unhealthy relationship happening at the time between them and any family member or them and their friends, they tend to blame themselves and think, you know what, I am the problem. I am a burden. My family seems to be having problems because of me, especially if parents mention anything about the child in their fights. A lot of times parents are not very careful and they do argue or fight in front of the children, and they absorb everything. They're paying attention, and you might think, not for 1 second, you're not realizing this child is there listening to everything that you're saying. You're so focused on your own thing that you forget that you're impacting them in a negative way. And even though they're children, yes, these types of things can lead to self-harm behavior. So a child cutting, or even if it's just taking a scissors and rubbing it against their wrist or thighs is another area where they will hide it, there can be self-harm behavior in children. And of course, that is very alarming for a parent or a caretaker or anybody who sees this in a child, but it's not something that you can oversee.